The last turn feels fantastic. As we cross the line for a stunning 50.3, a half-second lap time improvement from the default tune over a lap that's only 50 seconds long. On larger tracks, you can see how tuning can literally save you seconds.
Hello, we just watched a comparison video of Ermz to mine. I included the baseline times we set to account for different skill level at the game and the difference in tuning I gained over his. It's a very good tuning guide. I'm not going to rag on him. I recommend you watch it. I'm going to include it up here in the corner. You can click on it and go watch it, or in the description. What I want to do is just go through what he did with his tune and what I did with my tune. I plan a more fully in-depth walkthrough on tuning your own car a little later, but for right now I'll show the differences between what he did, what I did, and the theory behind it, so that you can gain right away upwards of a second or more, potentially even 2 seconds, depending on the car, on the tracks you're tuning for. So without a further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with downforce. This is where I always start with my tunes. I want to know how to get the rotation I need out of high-speed corners, depending on the track. Ermz here is at Lime Rock, so he has the right idea. He goes full downforce and then backs off the rear for rotation. Where I differed is I didn't feel he went far enough. To be fair to Ermz, he's going for a realistic feel on the car. I'm playing to the game. So if you want to get maximum effect out of your downforce, you're going to lower the rear downforce until you're just at the point when you're going through a high-speed corner that you actually, the wheel kind of becomes light. So if you have a strong mechanical trail, if you've seen my video on how to set your force feedback, it'll actually get light, and it'll be sent, and you'll be about center. This is at the point where your car is kind of straight, but it's also not sure if it's leaning left or leaning right, if it's about to go in oversteer or understeer, so it gets a little light. I use that so that when I'm tuning, I know where the absolute limit of my rear downforce is when I'm going through corners to get maximum rotation going through that corner. Say in ACC, we would call that aero balance. And you want to find where that aero balance is on the car. In ACC, you don't have a front downforce splitter adjustable, so you raise the rake. That doesn't work which is raising the rear ride height to get the aero balance shifted to the front of the car. That doesn't work in Forza, but we do have an adjustable front splitter. So in this case, and in lots of cases, on a high downforce track, you're going to go with full front downforce and then lower the rear. Now, on some lower downforce tracks, you might actually go as low as you can go and then bring the front up for rotation. However, it depends on the car. So like at Road America Speed Track, I found this car in particular does not favor going full low downforce, that I have to keep a minimum level of downforce. But you can take this ratio that you find with your downforce and adjust it by the track. Now, you don't want to necessarily go by the numbers in terms of clicks because they're different ratios, but you can kind of use that ratio you get, say, from a high downforce track and apply that to lower downforce tracks. So in this case, I found much more rotation and high-speed corners just simply by lowering the rear downforce. You just didn't really go quite far enough for maximum effect. If you go too low, the rear will just come out on you when you go through high-speed corners. So you do have to keep some rear downforce. You just can't take it all the way to the rear on some cars. Some cars are so stable and so understeery, like the KTM Crossbow, you're effectively going to be at the lowest possible on the rear. But that's not the case with this car. This is about the right spot I found in this car. And I would adjust, so Silverstone, I would adjust it up or down a little bit, depending on the track. But this is the ratio for Lime Rock that I found that gave me the best aero balance going through high-speed corners. Let's talk ARBs. I found that Ermz is absolutely right with most cars. You go up almost all the way to max anti-roll bars, and it very much helps with the how the car reacts going through corners. It's just much more responsive to wanting to rotate while staying controllable with stiffer ARBs. That being said, I found this particular car, at least for me, I found did better with softer ARBs than fully stiff ARBs. So as you can see, I'm much lower ratio wise in ARBs than Ermz is. The other thing you'll see, again, just like through the high speed corners, through the mid speed corners, I want quite a bit of rotation. I don't want to feel like the car is getting stuck at the midway point, not wanting to rotate. So you can see I actually have ratio wise, I have 0.5 higher roll bars than Ermz does, where he's 3.9 down from his front. This definitely gives me a rotation. It did create a problem because when you lower the downforce on this car in the rear, that those Porsche characteristics come in, and then I started having some issue on corner entry. However, we can talk about that issue under the diff and how I was able to correct that issue while still maintaining the amount of extra rotation I got by having just slightly higher rears than the fronts. But definitely want to go stiff on your anti-roll bars. If it's just too much, the car is too responsive at let's say 40 and 40, start lowering it. And then you can start adjusting whether you want more oversteer or understeer. And on some tracks like Mid-Ohio, where you got a lot of camber and hills that throw your car off, stiff ARBs could definitely be a detriment to the stability of your car, where you need the softer ARBs for it to roll with the pitch through the track. So I found like at Mid-Ohio, I'd have to lower the ARBs settings overall to be softer. Next is usually the third thing I do is a differential. So let's talk about it. In his video, Ermz goes all the way up to 100 acceleration. I normally don't go this high. It's this car. This car is so understeery under acceleration. Even the other Porsches aren't quite this understeery under acceleration with the standard diff setting. Yeah, I had to go all the way to 100. On other tracks, I tend to run this around 90 with this car. I did test it on other tracks. But on this track, yeah, I pushed it all the way to 100 so that as you're getting on acceleration, you can rotate that rear around. Now, if you remember, under ARBs, I said when I had set them, I was having a problem on corner entry with the rear wanting to come out on me. You can see Ermz did not change his deceleration. He left it alone. I raised it up to 22. That was about the sweet spot. So that as I came off the throttle, or if I did a little quick brake, because there are a couple corners at Lime Rock where you had to do kind of a tap brake, the rear end stayed steady on me. So raising a decel can keep you steady on those really not hard braking corners. You're just using the corner to rotate. If the rear is coming around on you, you raise a deceleration. If the rear is not coming around, if it's just not wanting to rotate, then you can lower the deceleration. And you got the kind of, generally you want to do this after ARBs and downforce, because it could depend on the type of corner, whether it's slow or high speed. So it's going to vary from track to track. But in this case, I ended up at the same setting on the acceleration as Ermz. Just know that normally I'll be running somewhere between about 70 and 75. I might go lower than 70 depending on the track. But with most cars I've tried so far, but with this one, yeah, I ended up at 100 at Lime Rock and usually kind of around 90 or more, depending on the track. And deceleration, because I kept my ARB so loose, I had to raise it up in order to have steadiness on corner entry. The last one I'm going to talk about is alignment. And Ermz is pretty spot on in his video. I have a kind of a different way of actually checking for camber and tire pressure. But my baseline just to start, which is what I did with this car, is 1.5 and 1.0 on the rear. Later on, once I've set everything else and I want to set a good general, I will actually go into the tire temperature tire temperatures and actually adjust my camber and tire pressures. And from that point, he is right on tire pressures. You need to go up a bit, but unless you're using the tire temperature, I find that's the most accurate way to make sure that the middle isn't staying cold, that it's getting pretty even across. As for toe, yeah, I reset that to 0. I did not use negative 0.1 on this car. This is like one of the last things I would do on a car if I just want a little more stability on the throttle. That's not an issue with this car. I even contemplated when I was doing a lot of testing for it if I would go into positive rear, like positive 0.1. I didn't end up doing that, just stayed at 0. Ermz says 6 to 7 for caster. I almost always start at 7. In this case, I did bring it down a little bit. A lower caster tends to give you a little quicker response. And that's what I wanted with this car. So I still ended up with a higher caster than he showed that he used in his video. So yeah, I would start at 7 and then kind of work my way down. I probably wouldn't go lower than 6 on any of the cars I build. So that's what I have for alignment. Erm's video is a really great video. Hope I showed you how you can even take that farther to get more time off your tuning. I will be doing kind of a walkthrough where I'll kind of be repeating a lot of this stuff. And also I'll get into deeper detail. I'll probably put it in parts where I go over, say, tires, and then I go over the camber, like how to actually set that by the track. And it's a bit of a complicated process. All right, I'll leave you with this lap. I ran like a 49.6 on this lap. It's a very difficult car to be consistent with and push to the limit. I was pretty surprised with how stable it is on its base tune, that it can get squirrely really fast as you try to get it a little more limber. And then at the same time, its on power understeer is still really bad, even with a much better tune. So it's a bit of a tricky car to drive. When I do my full walkthrough on tuning, I have a request to do the 17 Porsche RSR. Much better car. It'll be interesting to see what I can get with that. I think I'll do Silverstone or one of the other tracks. Other than that, this was pretty fun challenge. I do have a respect for Ermz in the video he put out, and I do believe it's worth watching. I just wanted to show you how you can maybe take it a little farther and get more time out of it. Cheers.